book was Play Like a Pirate by Quinn Rollins. And his whole idea is, why would you make your students do something that you didn't even find fun or engaging?
In his book, Burgess writes about the passions too many of us leave at home. Passions we mistakenly believe have nothing to do with our jobs. This is a quote, by the way. Music, cooking, sports, movies, video games, gardening, architecture, all the things we adults do to blow off steam. The obsessions we have, the things that make us happy when we're doing them, the things that make us feel like us. Those are the things we should be bringing into the classroom. Teach Like a Pirate reminded me that bringing those passions to work invites happiness into the classroom as well. End quote. We talk about section 1, which was about toys. And the author quotes or says, "My passion, toys. Most of us loved toys at some point in our lives. And because of that, I think we should implement it into our classrooms because they're fun and most of us like it." The first suggestion that he gives is using action figures, and both you can make like small manipulative action figures, but specifically he focused on doing action figures that are cards. So you could design what the image would look like, and then on the back talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, what a potential ally might be, what a potential enemy would be. He gave the example of doing this with the elements from the periodic table. And if you wanted to apply it to like a FCS classroom, you could use it with foods, like the different types of food, nutritions or vitamins or food groups or something like that. And another one he gave was Transformers and also Hot Wheels. I'm going to touch on them both at the same time. That you could design a car or design something that can kind of change from one thing to another thing. And this could be used in an FCS classroom as like designing a different style of home. So like the different styles of home, and then designing it to what it would look like as a home, and then what it would look like as a car or as a whatever else you want to do with it. That's the creative thing you can do. And then also like maybe emphasizing on one of the elements of design for both fashion or interior design or anything like that. The next one that he mentioned was about Play-Doh, and this one's something that we've used since we were young. It's something we've used a lot in the education classrooms. And Play-Doh is good for sculpting and also for free play. So he mentioned using it just to get students warmed up for the class for the days, just using it as a small manipulative. And then the Play-Doh could also be something that you sculpt or create something out of, and that he's used a lot in his classroom for creating things that make sense, like for historical figures or historical things that happen in history, or like the cell membrane, that you can use it for a huge variety of things. And the last thing he talked about, which he really hit on, was Legos, and how Legos can basically be anything. You can create anything with Legos. Even something as simple as like a class procedure could be demonstrated through a Lego. And in an FCS classroom, that could look like creating a floor plan, or you could create a house where you could design something like that, or you could design a food or a restaurant or something along those lines. But it's just another way that we can help teach students while also using toys, so it makes it more engaging and exciting.
Two is about games. In our dear book, Play Like a Pirate, is a quote by Fred Rogers. It says, "Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood." So our author, Quinn Rollins, talks about how we can incorporate games into our classrooms. A couple ways that he introduces that is by putting Legos in, like we already talked about, incorporating just small aspects of games, like rolling a dice when you're trying to choose students randomly, or you can do trash get ball. Another way to do that is incorporating something like Minecraft into your classroom, which incorporates lots of different types of skills and community learning that the students have to learn about. An important part is like, let kids lose. It's okay. They'll get over it. And they have another chance to win a different game another time. Games can also provide opportunities for students to recall information or processes on the fly instead of regurgitating a lecture or filling in a bubble sheet or anything like that. Also, if you don't have a game made, just make one yourself. You can use a template. For example, using Chutes and Ladders, you can detail your own game however you want to using that template. You can also use junior versions of board games. They're a lot more simplified and they're easier to manage in a classroom setting. You can also have your students create their own board game or their own video game or anything like that. It gives them an opportunity to learn in a different way than just trying to regurgitate the information from the lecture. But also you need to help them recognize that the way that they play these games, they do it for a reason. They're incorporating their critical thinking skills, their meta thinking skills, and they're developing many different ways to learn the information from your content.
3 was about superheroes, graphic novels, and comic strips. Superheroes are such a mainstream part of today's culture that incorporating them into our teaching immediately sparks students' interest. Whether you're having your students create their own superhero or analyze existing superheroes, because they all have background with superheroes, they become engaged. In a family consumer science classroom, you could create superheroes for the different styles of parenting, or for the vitamins and minerals. You can look at the superheroes that already exist by analyzing the roles of men and women, or you could create superheroes to represent the founders of family and consumer science. Graphic novels and comic books are sometimes looked down upon for not being real books, but they are real books. And you still have to read them and comprehend them and understand what's happening. And sometimes kids who don't enjoy reading as much really love those comic books and graphic novels because they're different and they're more engaging to them with the pictures and the different kinds of dialogue. The difference between graphic novels and comic strips is that graphic novels and comic books are full stories and they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, whereas a comic strip is just like a snapshot. Comic strips are short and sweet, and students have opportunities to read them for a bell ringer or connect it to their class in fun ways and incorporate them. He talks about how sometimes incorporating them into your class by like having them make connections between the comic strip and your class can be even more fun because it's even more ridiculous and even more silly to connect Garfield to interior design. So
some of the key concepts of our book, I would like to read one more thing that Quinn Rollins wrote in his book. Some people think that being seen as a fun teacher carries some risk. The worry is that if you're fun, you'll never have the respect of your students, their parents, or your administrators. In my opinion, if that's your concern, you probably have bigger problems than Lego can solve. The biggest risk with making your class fun is your students are more likely to be engaged and get on your side. With them on your side, you'll be able to take them somewhere. You can be the fun teacher and teach them great content. You can have a rigorous instruction taking place in a fun classroom. Another risk you face as a fun teacher is that your students will go into their other classes and tell their friends they had fun in your class. How terrible. End quote.
Our FCS classrooms are already going to be fun. Our content is fun. We're passionate about what we do. With the things that Quinn Rollins teaches us, we can engage students with these toys, these games, and comics, and we can truly make our classroom fun again.
Oh,